I'm alive. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Jit Geek. I'm your host, JG, Jit Geek. And today we're going to be reviewing House of the Dragon Season 1, Episode 1. Now, better late than never, but I thought I'd get my review across as soon as possible. Sorry about the delay, and Episode 2 will be following shortly, and then we'll try and do more of a regular upload for the rest of the season. Now, if it all works out, I'm going to be going through the episode bit by bit. Just to review it kind of scene by scene, really. And yeah, just to give my thoughts really on the episode. I thought it was a great opening episode. It really captured the essence of the book. It really captured the feel of old Game of Thrones. It was definitely an old Game of Thrones feel. It's very serious. All of the elements were in there from Game of Thrones, minus the White Walkers, sort of. But we'll get into that. I mean, what's not to love? It had dragons, it had fights, it had bloodshed, it had Daemon Targaryen. So we'll cover all that, and it had some prophecy stuff. And what you'll learn to know about me and this channel is I'm a massive fan of Game of Thrones, or at least I was. Very burnt with the season 7 and 8, but the earlier seasons, all the prophecy stuff, I love that from the books as well. So yeah, we'll get into that. But just to kick the review off then, it did start out with King Jaehaerys. Let's see if we can just scroll to him. There he is, King Jaehaerys. And he was a good king. By the books, by George Martin, he was a good king. Was he the conciliator? Jaehaerys the conciliator? That could have been number 2. My Targaryen kings isn't the strongest knowledge. Nonetheless, he was a good king, and like many other Targaryens, there was a succession crisis. So I thought it was a good opening to the show. It was it's quite a complex storyline to start off with, but I thought they did really well in just kind of boiling that down to its main parts, really. And then I thought not so much a fan of Rhaenys, the queen who never was, but we'll get onto her and the other characters. I guess before we start like deep diving into the review, maybe some kind of overview of my thoughts of the episode. I thought the costumes were brilliant. I thought the settings and the scenery was brilliant. I thought the actors, large majority of them, were fantastic, well cast. Obviously, Matt Smith stole the show because he's Matt Smith. He's brilliant. I thought Paddy Considine, he was fantastic. Loved him in a few other films that I've seen before. And Rhys Ifans, or is it Ifans? I thought he was fantastic, and I can already see him being very much a just checking if we're live. I can already see him being very much like a Tywin Lannister sort of Littlefinger combination, doing a bit of backstabbing and lots of politics, lots of strategy. He's already proving to be a fan favourite, and he's already proving to be a favourite of mine. So, I thought I thought he was a great character and well transitioned from the books. Um, yeah, surprisingly, Rhaenyra, is it Rhaenyra? Yeah, Rhaenyra, um, and Alicent's connection. Now, despite that being some book spoilers and some episode spoilers, obviously, but despite there being a difference in the books, I thought it was quite a good change that they made, where they made them friends, because in the books, from what I know, the the friendship isn't as close, or it isn't even there entirely. So I thought bringing them together as like a pair, as a friendship, I thought that was. And obviously, having watched episode 1 and 2 now, and knowing what happens in episode 3, that's obviously going to make the conflict probably even better. So I thought that was a great change from the showrunners. It definitely feels like Game of Thrones. I mean, it feels a lot like seasons 1 to 4, where there was that real seriousness, and like the tone. It doesn't feel as like as funny or as witty as probably seasons 6, 7, and 8 felt. There is definitely that seriousness. So yeah, I thought I'd probably give it about an 8.5 to a 9 out of 10. I thought it was a fantastic episode. I mean, it literally had everything minus White Walkers, and um, yeah, can't wait for the rest of the season. Really, I can imagine there's going to be there's some slower episodes, um, but I'm also probably conscious that what we've seen in the trailers, and I'll be doing some trailer reactions as the season progresses, as we see the new episodes, etc. I don't think we've seen that much of what the season has to offer. So I'm hoping there's a lot of surprises, especially with the prophecy stuff. And as I've said, I'm big on the prophecy, and you'll start to know that, big on the prophecy stuff. So hopefully we see a bit more of the Aegon's prophecy, the dream, the prince that was promised. Now, the trouble with all of this is it all obviously still ends with Game of Thrones season 8, but and that disaster that happened there with Arya, and Cersei on the throne, etc., etc. But I do have a theory where all of this is building up to, in my eyes at least, a Game of Thrones seasons 7, 8, maybe additional season reboot, where they bring George on board, they get new showrunners, and they kind of restart it from where 6 left off. And whilst 5 and 6 had their problems, Game of Thrones, I did think they are probably good enough to stay. They've definitely got their issues and their flaws. I mean, we can even see the flaws coming in from probably season 4 of Game of Thrones. But it's probably a good enough starting point to do a reboot. So I suspect this is because it's following more book canon, this House of the Dragon. I suspect that we will be seeing I suspect that we'll be seeing a reboot at some point for season 7 and 8, and potentially additional, additional seasons. Now, obviously, that's speculation. That's just my thoughts, but from what I've heard from other YouTubers, most importantly, a couple of videos recently from Dictor Van Doomcock, where he's talking about David Zaslav, who's just taken over as Warner Brothers CEO. He's talking about how he can reinvent and revitalise that Game of Thrones brand. he wasn't really too happy about the popularity of House of the Dragon. Whilst it's probably big and popular compared to the rest of the shows that are out there, I think they want to see that at the grand size that Game of Thrones had. So fingers crossed. I'm really hoping that we get a Game of Thrones season 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I know George Martin has said before they could have gone up to 12 seasons. Hopefully we can get that at some point. I suspect it will probably be after House of the Dragon. Give George time to bring the books out, bring the Winds of Winter out, maybe drop some hints about what's going on in the Dream of Spring. Maybe he brings that out as well, and they wait for him to bring all of the books out. That's probably a real long way ahead, long way to go for that though. So we'll see, but I'm excited for this season of House of the Dragon. I thought, like I said, 8.5, 9 out of 10. I thought it was a great start to this. It was a great kick-off to the season, but it's given me hope, because I was like broken at the end of Game of Thrones, and especially with the long night and Arya killing the Night King, and it's given me a little bit of hope. So I hope that they don't fuck it up, and I hope that they don't mess with too many of the storylines, and I hope that they don't change too many storylines from the books and go too far in their own direction. Now, yes, the prophecy stuff is not in the books. It's hinted at, and I know George Martin's hinted at it, but personally, I think it's it's like they haven't shoehorned it in. It seems to have come natural to the episode. So hopefully we get some more on that, but equally I hope that they stick to the books, which the episode looked like it did stick to the books, and hopefully the rest of the episodes are as good as this one. Right, I think what we'll do is we'll go through scene by scene and just kind of get an overview of what's going on here. So who have we got here? Paddy Considine playing Viserys Targaryen, who I think is Jaehaerys' grandson. So something happened to his dad's, and then obviously it came to Viserys. That's Emma. She's an Arryn, or she has Arryn blood, but she's got a Targaryen mother, I think. Jaehaerys. Now, what was interesting is that there was many claims to be, many claims to the throne to be considered, but only 2 remained, and for the life of me, I can't remember many of the others. I know obviously the Targaryen family tree is pretty big, but I can't really recall why there would have been 17 odd different claimants. Anyway, let's just go back. There is a part about the maesters where they there we go. So the maesters, is it the maesters that give him the scroll? Because there's definitely something going on with the maesters, and I know we've got the books, and there's the whole kind of Marwyn the Mage plot and the glass candles and the Grand Maester conspiracy, but there's evidence in this that that there's something going on with the Maesters, and whether they're on the side of the hand of Otto Hightower, or whether they're on the side of, well, whether they're on their own side. I think it remains to be seen at the moment, and maybe they may end up being one of the like the secret sort of villains of the season. Right, let's just. I think we'll just scroll past this. Basically, what's happening is, and what is apparent is that, yeah, I mean, there's two claimants. It's ended up being a vote, and the majority went for Viserys, and of course, Rhaenys, the queen who never was, as she was named, was obviously snubbed. Now, whether that's gender, whether that's just, I don't know, whether that's the Maesters again, whether that's because the vote thought that Viserys was probably just the better person for the, for the crown, remains to be seen. I mean, obviously, Rhaenys is going to think that it's to do with gender. Not so sure. So, yep, Targaryen badge. I thought this was interesting, but relating it to Game of Thrones is, considering the backlash and how bad it was perceived, and, well, my affinities with the latter seasons with Game of Thrones, it was both good because it set the scene about how King Viserys Targaryen's reign relates to the story we know of Game of Thrones, but equally, it just brings up all those memories again, and those thoughts of how badly, especially Daenerys Targaryen's story finished with Dany kind of forgot, the Mad Queen, the kind of the bad death scene, the lack of build up for all that. So, on one hand, yeah, it sets the scene about how far apart this story in House of the Dragon is compared to Game of Thrones, but yeah, it still brings back those memories. So 172 years before Daenerys Targaryen. And to start off with the dragons, I thought was good. Let's just try and get a shot. Nice shot there. And the dragons, I mean, apart from the odd scene, I think the dragons look exceptional. Let's just try and get that. Yeah, I think the dragons look exceptional, and you can see the amount of work that they've done with the CGI, with the with the detail. I mean, compared to, like, what was it, the Rings of Power, that CGI looks awful, looks terrible. It looks like they've had a bunch of amateurs doing it. So, I mean, I'm not a CGI expert, but you can tell the difference that, like, even, to be fair, even in the back end seasons of Game of Thrones, one of the, apart from the music and, like, the the scenery and the visuals and stuff, one of the main things, the CGI was impressive, and the dragons looked really good, and I think they look just as good in this. At the same time, it's great that they've all got their own characteristics, and I mean, this shot here was, I think we saw this on one of the trailers. This was just brilliant. The visuals were just superb in this episode. Yeah, this is the dragon over King's Landing again. Starting with King's Landing, the kind of the Mad Queen Daenerys sort of storyline at the end of Game of Thrones. Again, it brings up those bad memories, but hopefully they can reconcile that with some more great episodes. Now, what we've got here is what we've got here is the dragon pit. So thinking a couple of, so that was the dragon pit at the end of season 7, episode 7, where they had the counts when everyone like come together kind of for the last time, and they bargained with Cersei for her to send the troops up to Winterfell. They were in this dragon pit, but obviously it was in ruins. Now, in this episode, or in this, I guess in this show, it's obviously been brought back to life, and it's it's where I guess all the dragons kept in the day and fed and watered. I mean, it doesn't look. I mean, it looks big, but it doesn't look big. Like it doesn't look. It looks like they're going to be pretty crammed in there if there are like a dozen dragons still alive at this point. Another good shot there. Now these were interesting. They're kind of the dragon gatekeepers, and that's who's this dragon again? I think that's these. I mean, these only talk in High Valyrian from what I can muster. So yeah, they're like proper Targaryens or Valyrians. I mean, even like Rhaenyra, and then I can't put my finger on what his name was, but I know, is it Westerling maybe? I like Sworn Sword. He's like a nice Scottish version of the Hound. Obviously, he's like a like granddad sort of figure. But again, like I said at the start, the change in the book, and obviously this is a spoiler for those that haven't read the book. The big change in the book for these two characters, so we've got Rhaenyra and we've got Alicent, is they weren't really friends in the book. They didn't really have a lot of time together. They were quite, they weren't as close as what they've made it on the show. But I think they've improved the storyline in my eyes, bringing them together as a pair, because it just makes the whole conflict a lot juicier and a lot better, and it makes the stakes a bit higher. I think the costumes look the part as well. Oh, nice shot of the dragon going into the dragon pit there. I mean, look at that for CGI. It looks, they've brought dragons to life. I mean, you can't really argue with that, really. You compare that, like I said, to like the Wheel of Time or the Rings of Power. There's just no comparison, really. Nice few other shots of King's Landing, bringing back those memories again. What I would say is, though, is it gives kind of the scene room to breathe and establishes the setting and where we are, and it kind of just gives us an idea that it's as much of a market town as it was in the later, in all of the episodes of Game of Thrones, really, and just kind of brings it to life. And I really thought that this was good, and all the heraldry, I love all the flags and all the statues and the banners and stuff. I think they've got those really on point as well. That'll be interesting to see what happens if they put the height. Well, I shan't say any spoilers actually. Let's see what happens with those flags cometh some of the latter episodes. I mean, again, they've brought the Red Keep to life and King's Landing to life, and I just think it looks brilliant. And I mean, this is a great shot, because if you cast your mind back to where we were in the show, for those eagle-eyed viewers, this is where Cersei had turned this room and this floor particularly into the map of Westeros. And what I always found interesting and a bit weird is there weren't many people about King's Landing. I know she was quite private and stuff, Cersei was, but you never thought of it as a kind of public space. It was always just her, the guards, and very few specific like royal families or the the nobles. Here it looks more like a kind of political centre. So I thought that was like an interesting change to what they've done in Game of Thrones as well. Again, more shots of the new besties. Now, who I thought played a really good part, and it's a shame really, is Rhaenyra's mom, or Rhaenyra's mother, should I say, Emma Targaryen. And I think she establishes the fact that she's brought into the kind of the motherly side of, and the childbearing side of being a Targaryen female. And it's interesting, whenever Rhaenyra speaks, acts, she's got a real like Arya feel to her. Like she's kind of a cross between Sansa and Arya. One hand, she knows she has to be, or she will eventually be maybe a queen and princess and the queen. On the other hand, though, she's got that kind of cheekiness and the kind of a bit of attitude, and it's refreshing because it's both characters in one. That's what I sensed at this point, anyway. And yeah, it's evident that a mother has obviously took on the role of the child bearer and really embraced that, whereas Rhaenyra, I think, was more so the heir situation with, and as we find out later in the episode, that she's probably got a slight attitude because of the whole heir situation. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting comparison, her between Sansa and Arya. Now, someone, I can't remember who it was, someone pointed out that the joke he makes could potentially be the end line to Tyrion's joke at the end of Game of Thrones season 8. I mean, my God, I hope not, because that was just probably the worst. That or the Bells, the worst episode of television, the most disappointing episode of television I've ever watched. Anyway, I mean, we can see on one hand, I mean, he plays a great part, Paddy Considine, as Viserys. We can see on one hand he's quite light-hearted, he's a bit of a joker, but when we get into the latter part of the episode, I like the range that he's got in terms of, sometimes he can be a bit playful, sometimes a bit of a joke, having a bit of a joke, and sometimes like he means business and he's the king. And we've got Corlys Velaryon again, is he the Master of Ships? Lord of Driftmark. I mean, he's going to be a key player in this season. Not really bothered that he's like the race has been changed and stuff. I know that does. I mean, spoilers again for the rest of the show, but that may have an impact on one of the key storylines for House of the Dragon. But we'll see how that one plays out. I mean, he's a decent actor. I recall him in a couple of things before, but and he's playing an okay part at the moment. I don't think he had much to do in this episode, though. Now, Maester Melos, I thought, I mean, he just looked sus in a few of the scenes coming up, and can't quite remember Beasley or Beesbury, I think, Lord Beesbury. I mean, the guy on the left, the Maester, yeah, in a few of the scenes, he looked a bit sus, and you don't know whose real side he's on. Is he on the King's? Is he on the Hand? You don't know. But again, another interesting dynamic to add to the whole political side of things. Because how I see House of the Dragon, yeah, you've got the dragons, and that then it's kind of like Game of Thrones seasons 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4, but with more dragons. So like heavy politics, heavy strategy, heavy backstabbing, heavy intrigue, and more the people side of the storyline, less of the kind of White Walkery prophecy sort of stuff, but with the dragons thrown in. And again, another layer was the whole Corlys plot point with the Triarchy now, who I'll be referring to as the Crab Man. Who I'll be referring to as the Crab Man. Yeah. The Crabman has formed the Triarchy between Meereen, Lys, and is it Pentos? Sorry, Mia, Lys, and Pentos. I think those are the Triarchy. Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a fight at some point when we've seen it in one of the trailers. Whether that's early doors, I don't know. I doubt it will be, because they can't leave the fight till the 9th episode. Surely not. Surely not. That happens. Surely that happens a lot earlier. Anyway, I thought again it was another interesting dynamic that they've brought in with the Triarchy, and it adds some more conflict to the storyline outside of King's Landing. Because what I'm conscious is about this show as a whole, we might not see too many other locations. I mean, one of the beauties of Game of Thrones was 1 minute we're up in the Wall, the next minute we're over in Essos with Daenerys, the next minute we're in King's Landing with Tyrion or Tywin, the next minute we're in the Reach. We're going to probably a dozen places here. It's mostly centred around King's Landing. It's mostly centred around the politics. So a change of scenery with the whole Triarchy, and whether that is over in Essos or whether it's in Driftmark, I think it's Driftmark, that will be a nice change. Yeah, a nice change of scenery, really. I mean, what I liked about the characterization here, and we'll get on to further scenes as well, is they're consistent with Rhaenyra being late to whatever function that is, whether it's the King's Council or otherwise. I don't think they're happy about her being there as the cupbearer. I mean, Otto Hightower, he's going to be a major player in this, and I think I know we've got the whole kind of plot with Alicent, but I think he's going to be the Tywin / Littlefinger character from seasons gone by in Game of Thrones. I mean, it's great that they've introduced her and got her as the cupbearer and stuff, so she can see what's going on. There's Beesbury again. I can't remember what he was talking about. Corlys again was banging on about the Triarchy, because I think that's going to affect the shipping lane that goes up towards Driftmark. and that's going to affect his trade, his profits, etc. So again, it's another strategic political conflict that we've got going on, but I think that's where we'll get the majority of the fights, of the battles, and probably more sword and shield as opposed to dragons. You know, there's obviously going to be dragons there eventually, or in some of them, but I'm hoping that we'd see some good sword fights as well. I don't think we got his name actually in the show, and I can't remember who he was from the King's Guard. He's the sworn protector by the looks of it of Viserys, and probably head of the King's Guard. Or what I liked was these spheres, like these balls, and I'm guessing they mean like if that person is ready for council, like the ball goes in, they're ready for council. I thought that was interesting as well, where Corlys was refusing the wine. I don't know why. I don't know really why they'd done that. Maybe he didn't want to get drunk to start mouthing off. I don't know. I never got that bit. Now this guy on the left, and again I can't remember his name, but he's an interesting one. And I know in the books, like the characters seem to think he's a bit of an oaf and a bit of a doofus, and he doesn't really know a lot. But when it comes to it, he's actually pretty clued up, and I'll be sure to get his name on the tip of my tongue for the next episode review. But yeah, he'll be an interesting voice of the council going forward. Didn't really have much to say here, but I'm sure he'll have something, a lot to say going forward. And it's interesting he's eating an egg, because that whole kind of tie-in with egg and Aegon and dragon eggs, birth, all that different symbolism. Whether that's the intention, I mean, if it is, that's very clever. Yeah, I think we've seen enough. Now, George Martin's favourite character, and probably, quite possibly, my favourite character so far in House of the Dragon. And I loved how they were using the Valyrian language. I thought that was brilliant. High Valyrian, to speak to each other. I mean, what an entrance, Matt Smith. I mean, they all just look brilliant, as they really bring to life like the Targaryen look. I think they look great. His new hair, yeah, not you, mate. Not you, Matty boy. But yeah, I thought it was a great introduction. I think he really looks the part, and the gravitas he brings to the episode, and not just from like kind of his past performances and stuff, but the gravitas in terms of the role as well. I think he really brings, from what we see later on in the episode, he really brings to life the character of Daemon, and I think he does a really good job. So I thought this was interesting how he gave her the Valyrian necklace. I mean, obviously we don't know the significance of that yet, but whether it does have a significance remains to be seen. What is clear, though, is, and I know it's weird, but what is clear is that he's got some feelings for Rhaenyra, which isn't so uncommon with the Targaryen family tree and family heritage. I mean, the majority of them are incestuous relations and brothers marrying and having offspring with sisters and siblings and cousins, etc. So, yeah, this will be an interesting dynamic between the two of them and an interesting relationship between the two of them for future episodes. It was a nice introduction though to these two characters, and the relationship that they've got. It's very kind of brother and sister, but at the same time, it's like they've got respect and love for one another. And the other side of things is you can see there's a bit of a spark between, especially coming from Damon. In this part, one thing that I'm a bit annoyed about is the fact that they've got a weirwood tree in King's Landing, and I don't know why. That's got to have some sort of significance for the rest of the show, whether it gets burned down or something. That isn't a spoiler, that's just my opinion, because that wasn't in the books, and I don't think it should be in the show, if I'm honest. Anyway, we're getting more of these two together. Alicent Hightower, daughter to Otto, and Rhaenyra telling us all she wants to do is eat cake. And interestingly, they start talking about Nymeria, who was a Dornish princess that did a lot of sailing and, did a lot of good stuff for the Dornish name. And apparently is one of the prequel shows, which doesn't sound that interesting, if I'm honest. But, we'll see. I really hope they focus on other stories. I mean, Robert's Rebellion, Aegon's Conquest. They could do a whole bunch of other Duncan Egg. A Game of Thrones season 7, 8, 9, 10 reboot would be nice, and would be much preferred more than Nymeria and the 10,000 ships. So we'll see. I mean, it looks great, the weirwood, but it's very much out of place there. Rhaenyra being a bit of a know-it-all. It's a nice contrast, though, the two of them. Like, Alicent's very, like, by the book, and very Sansa. Very, like, by the book, very scared of getting stuff wrong, and, she's got to be very ladylike, whereas Rhaenyra's very... very Arya, very kind of disruptive and cheeky, and quite very Arya. That's how she come across to me anyway. I mean, we'll just touch on the we'll get to that scene there, but this part about the cut, if you can see at the bottom of the image there. There we go. Very interesting in terms of the how they're bringing to life the impact of the throne, shall we say, and we'll talk about it more when we get into that scene. The impact of the throne on unworthy kings. I mean, that's what I think anyway. Now, this is the sort of maester hand politics that I was talking about earlier, and I think there's definitely something going on with these two, because I mean, he's a shady cat on the left, and it's very rarely that we'll see Mellis talk to the king directly. So they can't really do much for the cut. And I thought this was a great scene with Emma and Viserys meeting her and talking about the heir and saying about the dream. Get the subtitles up. No. It's a shame, she's been through a lot, but yeah, I like the line when he said it was clearer than a memory. I thought that was that really hit the nail on the head about how his prophetic dream is clear as day, basically. Now, what was interesting though is how that prophecy, how that prophecy, how that prophecy will be interpreted cometh the following few episodes, in terms of what he had to say in terms of the giving birth to an heir or a son, was it, with a crown on his head. So that'll be interesting. But I think it does a good job in bringing in both the pregnancy and the kind of prophecy sort of stuff in a light fashion, and they hit you hard with it at the end of the episode. Yeah, I mean, it's clear that she feels a bit guilty, Emma does, about not being able to give him well, at the moment anyway, an heir, because they're running the risk of being reliant on either Rhaenyra or this baby. And I really enjoyed their dynamic together as husband and wife. Now, as much as the episode was great, and when I was watching it for the first time, what I couldn't figure out, I mean, my God, he looks like a boss in his armour. But what I couldn't quite figure out was whether or not, I mean, the speech he gave was brilliant. Loved it. Loved the speech. What I couldn't figure out, though, was whether or not the people that they were going after were just randomers, or whether they were actually criminals and whether they knew who they were. Because I don't think that was really clear. And it's probably only one. It's probably the only thing in the episode that knocks it down a peg or a two. Because that part was a bit unclear. I mean, look, the costumes look fantastic and the scenery looks great. I mean, the slums, was he Prince of the Slums or something like that in the books? I mean, the costumes look great. All of this sort of stuff looks great. It makes you feel like you're in like the dodgy parts of King's Landing. Was this the? Yeah, so this was the small council after the onslaught of the criminals. I suspect there was some innocence in there as well, hence why they've called a small council to kind of put Daemon on the blocks and make him explain his actions. But I thought the interaction between these two was absolutely fantastic, and I just can't wait for more conflict between these two. And I think as the season progresses, it's probably more to do with the succession and the specific characters about the succession, but more of these two, please, together, because that is almost as, I wouldn't say as good as at the moment, but it's giving me Littlefinger and Varys vibes from Game of Thrones. What was evident, though, is, I mean, Matt Smith does a great job of portraying Daemon, and even more so in this scene, does a great job of winding up Otto Hightower about his wife, and that cheeky grin just says it all. Now, this is where I like Viserys, though, because he he brings more of a kind of diplomatic king here. He lets them has their say, and he doesn't let them take the piss, but at the same time he puts his foot down and makes sure that they know he's the one with the final decision. And he just gets roasted about his wife as well, which I shouldn't laugh because she passed and he's obviously got a new wife and stuff. But yeah, he gets roasted by Daemon. Now, I couldn't quite put my finger on whether or not Corlys Velaryon was on the side of Daemon here, and I think already twice he's spoken about Daemon. So that'd be interesting to discuss in later episodes. I think this is where they're talking about the axe, and this is where we get to the part about the wife. And he gets a bit airy, Otto. That's where I think he puts his foot down and sends him on his way, as in the king sends him on his way. I thought this was a bit of an interesting. This was almost like his introduction, because you know his name, but it obviously comes across that he's a bit annoyed about stuff, or he just can't find something to scratch that itch, or I mean, great acting. And is it Masseria or Masera? The way she kind of, what I mean is about the introduction part, the way she kind of introduces him and gives us facts about he holds Dark Sister, which is the Targaryen Valerian steel sword. His dragon, which is what's the dragon's name? It's not Cyrax. It's it's the long neck boy anyway. Long neck red boy. So it's kind of his kind of synopsis really, and I thought that was it was an interesting way to do it. Can't really hardly understand Masseria. I mean, female Varys, that's what she basically is. So female Varys. Now, late again, Rhaenyra. And I thought this was the fact that we've got dragons, we've got a tournament, and we've got all the other bunch of the stuff that happens in this, along with the prophecy stuff. This was one of my favourite parts. In fact, this probably, apart from the prophecy stuff, obviously, this was the highlight of the show for me. Great intro by Viserys. I mean, look at that for spectacle. That just looks fantastic. And the costumes look brilliant. Loads of heraldry, flags. I thought that was fantastic. Got the Arryn flag, the Baratheon flag. Is that a Stark wolf there? Yeah. I mean, some of the jousting was brilliant. Yeah, bloody marvellous that was. Yeah. So that's Kristen Cole, who is lowborn in the show, but by the looks of it, looks a pretty formidable fighter and becomes a very, very, very important part of this whole story in the later, what I suspect will be the later episodes. Now, Rhaenys and Corlys, I mean, yeah, they do a bit of like bitching and stuff, and I suppose that sums up her character. She's a bit burnt and a bit scorned, and she's badged the queen who never was, and that guy, this guy here, I think it's Oren Baratheon, could be his name. That could be one of the fathers. Anyway, he's a Baratheon, and he even names her the Queen Who Never Was, and asks for her, for her, is it her hand? Great drums with the Targaryen badge on. Again, developing that friendship between Alicent and Rhaenyra here with the kind of like girl chat. I thought that was little subtle, little added extra. I mean, some more fantastic jousting. It's just brilliant how they do that. I mean, when we eventually get to it, when it cuts with the other part of this part of the show, there's a nice shot of I mean, even his armor, Kristen Cole's armor looks lowborn. It doesn't look very, it doesn't look as grand and as colourful as the rest of them do. Now you do need a hype man, and my God, he was one hell of a hype man for none other than our mate, and I suppose that is like one of the shots of episode 1 is Daemon Targaryen strolling in on his probably, I'm sure that's Valyrian steel suit of armor. I mean, that helmet, Jesus, that looks amazing. And even the horse is done out really well. You can see Rhaenyra cheering on her uncle. I mean, look, all the even the shields and the helmets and stuff look brilliant. I thought it was just a great piece of. I mean, it was a great like piss take, weren't it? Really, where he strolls up to Otto Hightower's kinsman, because this guy in the green here, he's part of the Hightower clan, as you can see from the towers on his clothing and his helmet, and picks him out as his opponent. You can see there he's annoyed. So yeah, they've so Daemon's chosen. Yeah, his name escapes me. I know he's a Hightower anyway, and he's just done it out of spite. And I thought this was. Let's try and get that bit. Oof. Now he takes him down. I mean, obviously they collide the first time, and then takes him down in a bit of using the kind of jousting dark arts there. Something you don't see every day from a jousting match. But I thought that was that was typical Daemon Targaryen. That was, and everyone, some love it, some are a bit shocked as to what's happened. I know these, my God, these two are not impressed. And as just further piss take, he's gone up to Alicent and asked for her flowers, just to put another nail in the coffin there, and just to stick it to Otto Hightower a bit further. But again, you can see the relationship between Rhaenyra and Daemon as well. It's very playful in times. But it's very loving as well. I mean, Otto don't look too impressed there. Now, again, as I'm saying about the Maesters, this isn't Melos. This is a different. What's her name? This is a different priest, a different Maester to Melos, the main Maester. I think he's the Grand Maester. Again, I know you're probably not allowed to talk to the king, per se, but you can see the Maester can obviously tell Otto Hightower one thing. Otto can then tell the king whatever he wants then. Whether it's the same thing, it probably is in this instance, because of what's to happen, which is to do with the the pregnancy. She's gone into a lay. Well, we were already told at the start of this scene that Emma's gone into the labours. But cutting this pregnancy, the birthing scene with the tournament, I thought was absolutely brilliant how they done that, and they kept cutting back and forth. Well, they did keep cutting back and forth, and it did get a bit annoying at some point, and we'll get to that shortly. It was probably at this point where the fight. Oh yeah, she talks about men full of seed, and they're summer fighters. They haven't seen true winter or true war, etc. So yeah, you sit on your. I kind of dislike her, but in a way that I think that's how they're trying to portray her, as a bit bitter, and she plays the character very well. Now this is the part where, that's a typical Game of Thrones blood and guts and gore and death scene. And this guy can't take it so much, can he? I think this is an interesting dynamic about the kind of the nails and the nervousness about Alicent. I think that's really a nice little subtle detail that they've brought into her character. But as they keep cutting, some of the fighting, they kept cutting back and forth a bit too much for my liking. Whether it was cost and budget, or whether it was just they tried to do something a bit clever and cutting away, etc., from this scene to the jousting and the tournament, I would have rather them stayed on, had kind of longer shots of them fighting. Yeah, longer shots of them fighting and seeing a bit more gore, because that's what I'm used to and like from the older Game of Thrones episodes. We get a shot of Corlys and Rhaenys' children as well, which come into the story a bit later on. But yeah, the birthing scene, I mean, was brilliant. It was, my God, it was realistic. I mean, he's panicking now. Do something. Is this where? Yeah, this is where he said. Melos says, you can sacrifice. Well, it's basically save one or kill them both. And I mean, unless you're in that sort of situation, I guess you'd never know what to say, would you really? But he does the. Is it a selfish decision? I don't know. But he does the thing that probably is best for the realm, because he obviously can't have any more, and what he thinks is best for the realm. But with that said, it probably is a selfish decision. Now another nice Game of Thrones-esque shot there. I mean, do they just go off willy-nilly and just start killing and fighting each other at these jousting tournaments? I don't know. This is the big one. Kristen Cole versus my man Damon. And what a battle this was. I mean, you can tell by the... I mean, look at the detail on that armour. That is just superb. And then it gets to Kristen Cole, and he's like, out of the spares, it's like lost property. I thought that was good. Now, this is where I enjoyed where they kept cutting back and forth, because the music was good, and the the cutting back and forth was brought the tension up. The stakes were high in both accounts, but what I did like was at the end of it all, both of the well, let's just get to it, because this is where they're going to do the. Is it kind of like a cesarean, I imagine? I mean, yeah, it's apparent that both of the Targaryen men here lose. Like Viserys is going to lose his wife because he's chosen to save the child, and obviously Daemon is going to be is losing the well, he's lost the joust, and now he's asking for his sword. Dark Sister. Yeah, you can see there the Targaryen wing. I think that's definitely Dark Sister. I mean, God, look at that for a bit of armor. That's brilliant. Kristen Cole looking cheap. I thought this was a good fight actually, because they didn't really cut away, and they showed quite a lot of the fighting. Love a bit of sword and shield, mate. But I think the birthing part was like it was the best part of the episode, really, because it was just so well done, so well acted, so well executed. Again, cutting back and forth from the fight, Kristen Cole getting on top, then Daemon getting a bit cocky. I liked that. It really shows he's one for the crowd, and he's got a bit of an ego. There's the little babe. And then this is when this scene is probably the start of when both of them start to lose in the episode, because I'm sure he says there, yield, and then he gets up and then he shrugs him away. Obviously, then we've got the Now, at this point, these pair don't know what's gone on. Very, very, very because I know what happens in the book, so I know that it's interesting that this is quite a bit of a cheeky move from Kristen Cole here, asking for Rhaenyra's favour. That's it, the favour. And you can see that there's some attraction with them going on as well. This is where, I mean, the acting here is superb. I mean, Paddy Considine he's just a brilliant actor. Is this where Otto finds out? And starts telling the rest of the nobles, and then she's found out as well. Rhaenyra has. Another thing, actually, I couldn't remember is if the Kristen Cole and the Daemon Targaryen joust was the final joust of the tournament, and if Kristen Cole was named the winner, because obviously it goes straight to Queen Emma's funeral scene here, which again, I mean, the dragon CGI isn't the best here, but pretty much the rest of the scene is brilliant. Although I would say there is a shot. Oh yeah, and then we find out that that the baby didn't make it as well, which is a bit. It's done kind of off screen, but you know, it's pretty evident by the by the visuals. What I did find funny was this looked like, I mean, this scene when you can see multiple Targaryens. It looked like they were. It looked like the Malfoys from Harry Potter. For one moment, I thought I was watching a different program. Yeah, you can see the emotion. I think the emotion was brilliant, and Damon stepping up as a kind of, you know, second father, great, like really portrays as a caring uncle in this scenario. Quite a contrast to the flirtatious, on the nose sort of, yeah, a bit lightheartedness in the throne room back at the start of the episode. I mean, I don't know why Rhaenys is. She looks like she's bloody smiling there. That's kin. That's just passed. But yeah, great acting by Rhaenyra here as well, and the fact that they talk in High Valyrian, just it's just chef's kiss, really. It just adds that little bit of extra book nerd sort of piece element to the episode that I really like. Again, Paddy Considine does some great acting here. You can see like he really loved her and mourning for and when she chokes, when and then she looks to her father. Now, whether that's kind of like, do you really want me to say the word, or do you want to say the word? And then I thought this particular scene, this particular little tiny bit here, was good in terms of the dragon's graphics. But as for the probably this part with the go away. But as for this part with the this part, I don't think the dragon piece was very good. Like the dragon CGI was very good, but you know, can't all be perfect. I mean, to move swiftly onto this was both a bit hastily. I thought it was hastily done. Nonetheless, I mean, Otto does bring up a good point. It's all done with purpose, but Otto does bring up a good point that right now there isn't a male heir apart from Daemon. But I suppose none of them, by the sounds of it, want Daemon. And again, I thought it was just all brilliant acting. And this is where this is probably, apart from later on, the one scene, this is one of Paddy Considine's best parts of the episode. Because after all of the blah blah, you know, can it really be Rhaenyra? Can it be Daemon? I mean, it can't be the baby now, the heir for the day. And this part where he blows up and says, "My wife and child have just died." I thought that was brilliant acting. I mean, yeah, top marks to Paddy there. But this part is where you start to see Otto Hightower really start to get into his more political Tywin Lannister sort of role, and I really do think he's going to be a major player, and he's going to do a brilliant part. He will be loved / hated as much as Tywin was. I mean, these two are always together, and that's why it makes me believe that they are going to do something sus. That they are either planning something together to try and get Viserys off the throne, or whether this whole story is their grand plan as opposed to just Otto's. I mean, some great acting as well by, you know, the girl who plays Alicent there, in terms of, like, you can tell the nervousness and the emotion from the funeral and stuff, and yeah. And when he drops the line about the dress, it was just like, so that's what the intention is. Now, we don't actually know, or I can't quite put my finger on what that model is of. Is it of King's Landing? Is it of Dragonstone? I mean, is it of Valyria? I think we find out. Surely we'll find out in later episodes. But this is the plan in motion now. And you can tell, like, she's a bit nervous as to being there with just the king. He thinks it's a bit weird. But then she starts relating to when she lost her mother, which I think helps start to bridge the gap between some of the similarities that they've gone. They've both lost something. They're both, I don't know whether she's still grieving, but they're definitely in a similar position to have lost someone very close. And I thought it was quite a good and subtle way of introducing quite a, not strange, but quite a delicate storyline. I mean, I don't think Viserys. I think Viserys is portrayed as an older character in the show, whereas, and I think Alicent is slightly older in the books, but nonetheless, I think it is quite an awkward storyline. This, from a kind of realistic point of view, but I think they do it very well in this scene to establish kind of the undertone of why Alicent's there, and the start and the making of, well, whatever this is between the two of them. Now we see Daemon in his natural habitat with the common folk in a brothel with all of his gold cloaks and his friend, female Varys, asking him to make a speech. Oh, and then it's not until now, this part, that we find out that he declared Balon, because Viserys had named the baby boy Balon, the heir for the day. Which, you know, it's a bit of a piss take, but should it be really taken that far? I don't know. I mean, he's only saying he was an heir for the day. I mean, technically, if it was up to if it was up to the maesters and maybe some of the small council, he probably was the heir for the day. But I guess because there are other options like Rhaenyra, then in the king's eyes he wasn't the heir for the day, so I guess he wasn't officially the heir for the day. But in others' eyes, more so than Daemon's, it could be argued that he was the heir for the day. And the fact that Otto has to break that news to the small council is just a kick in the teeth, really, for him and for the rest of the for the rest of them finding out. Now, when I said to you about the best scene with Paddy and Matt, i.e. Viserys and Daemon, I actually think this is probably the best scene with these two from the episode, where he gives it large. Yes, I mean, look at that acting, proper that is, the emotion, and you can tell at this point. Well, one, you can tell that he knows his place. Daemon definitely knows his place. Equally, though, when he starts giving it him back at this point, saying, telling Viserys the truth, whether he likes it or not, he's telling him the truth. And you can just tell he just wants to be loved, and he just wants his brother to take him seriously, and he just wants him to give him a place in his life as his hand, or some special place within the kind of the king's circle, because he seems a bit of an outcast, really, and like no one really wants him. But I thought it was a brilliant episode, great acting, and I'm in an argument about the throne. It's more. There's more there than there was in the Game of Thrones show, because I thought the Game of Thrones show didn't really reflect what the throne should look like. This is probably getting there. I don't know why there are swords on the floor, though, because really the throne should probably go up loads of stairs. I mean, practically, it looks better than what it did on Game of Thrones. Yeah, the acting was brilliant here, and then obviously he exiles him from the city back to... Is it Drum? No, I can't remember where he goes. Basically back to his wife and his... Oh, Runestone. And then we finish the scene with Daemon being kind of banished from the city, and then again another cut on Viserys from the throne. Now there is a theory, I think it's a theory, or it's kind of in the books, so book spoilers, where if the throne cuts the king, it means that the king is unworthy of the throne. So is Viserys unworthy of it? Well, some think he's a bit of a crap king, and I think that will come out more in his character and other people's opinions as the season goes on. Right, well, intertwining this with the them declaring for Rhaenyra, I thought again was fantastic, but obviously this was my favourite part of the whole episode. Now, I think I'd heard from Red Team Review, and I'd heard from, I think it was Nerdrotic as well, about, it might have been Nerdrotic, it was definitely Red Team Review, and it could have been someone else, that they talked about whether this episode or even this show will bring to life the hints that George Martin has been saying around the whole, why did Aegon leave Dragonstone to conquer Westeros, and the fact that they've brought this prophecy piece into House of the Dragon. I mean, I like it. I know we probably won't see the payoff, though, so from an end game perspective, in 3 seasons, I doubt we'll see any White Walkers. And of course, it all just ends up at where we were at the end of Game of Thrones season 8 anyway. So, you know, whether David and Dan, the showrunners at the time, took it in their direction, it doesn't match. Like at the time, Cersei was on the throne, and Viserys talks about there must be a Targaryen on the throne. Arya killed the Night King, although she killed, and sorry, spoilers. But if you haven't seen it by now, well, I don't even know why you're watching this. Arya killed the Night King. Yeah, she killed him with the blade that Viserys carries around, but she wasn't a Targaryen. And the whole kind of fire and ice sort of element thing, that really died of death, really. When he dropped that line about a song of ice and fire, my God, I was like, I was up from my seat. I was like, loving life, loving it. And yeah, I just love the fact that they've brought prophecy, because I didn't really think they were going to bring prophecy into this, and I didn't think they. And in one of the trailers, they talk about the prince that was promised, and I'm glad that they're bringing that back up, because that really, again, it follows book canon. It follows a Song of Ice and Fire. It doesn't follow a Game of Thrones like the show. It follows the books, and in my eyes, that's what they should just do. Just adapt the books like they did in Game of Thrones 1 to 4. You won't go wrong. This could be a bit of a spoiler for the Winds of Winter, and maybe even for A Dream of Spring. The whole A Song of Ice and Fire being Aegon the Conqueror's dream, and the reason why he brought himself and his sister wives to conquer Westeros was not just for power and glory, but was because of this dream and this kind of prophetic vision of the White Walkers of this cold winter. And it does relate to the other prophetic dreams that Daenerys the Dreamer, which I think was one of Aegon the Conqueror's wives, sister wives, she dreamt of the doom of Valyria, which I think Viserys talks about in this scene as well. But yeah, bringing prophecy into it is like the icing on the cake for me for this episode, and I'm just so glad that they've brought that. And the fact that it's come from George means it's not waffle, it's not BS, it's actually come from the author. And I do believe it will be a part of the end game story for a Game of Thrones. Sorry, not a Game of Thrones, for A Song of Ice and Fire, the books. So we'll definitely see, I believe, something within the Winds of Winter and or A Dream of Spring. And this is the part now where he talks about it. Yeah, A Song of Ice and Fire, and we get the houses declaring for Rhaenyra as the heir. There we go. He talks about A Song of Ice and Fire. And then we get Daemon going back on his dragon. Caraxes, that's the big red long neck dragon boy name. Caraxes. And then we finish on, oh no, this is it now. There was one other thing, Rhaenyra. Aegon had a dream, and that dream he named the Song of Ice and Fire. Blah blah blah. Talks about winter. Now, one of the other things that are recognised, he said, "Promise me, Rhaenyra," and I thought, wait a minute, cast your mind back to season 6, probably episode. No, it wasn't number 5. Probably 6, 7, 8, something like that, maybe, where Bran goes to the Tower of Joy, and Lyanna Stark's there and tells Ned promise me, Ned. So whether that's the phrase that they have to say to the next heir, promise me such and such, it might be, because they used exactly the same language, and I'm sure Alt-Shift-X has done a great breakdown on this episode and talks about the promise me piece and does the comparison. So maybe give that maybe check that out and give that a watch as well. But yeah, so that's them. So that's the blade that killed the Night King in episode 3, season 8 of Game of Thrones. That's the same blade that Arya was used, and we've seen that in the trailer. Alicent, an older version of Alicent, I think, using that knife to potentially attack someone. So who knows? It might be written on the knife. I don't know. It might just be just a callback, or the fact that we all know as an audience that blade. And that's that's Viserys claiming that Rhaenyra's the new heir to the throne. Get a nice shot of long red neck boy, and Daemon's on there with his female Varys woman, and they're off. And then we get so that's like the final shot. So I hope you all enjoyed the review. I thought that was a great season 1, episode 1, kickstarting the season off. I thought it was great. Really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. If you did, maybe drop a like, drop a follow. Plenty more Game of Thrones stuff to come. Plenty more House of the Dragon reviews to come. We're going to try and do an episode 2 before it will definitely be before the episode 3 drops on Sunday, Monday. It'll be Monday morning in the UK, and we'll then, as the weeks go on, we'll do the episode reviews closer to when the episode happened, like maybe on like a Wednesday or something like that, or I'll try and get them in on the Monday if I can. But if you like the review, drop a like, drop a follow, subscribe if you want, and tune in for more. And I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Take care.